Okay, on my side, it doesn't say we're live, but we are live now. So, welcome to the Housing Knowledge Drop, which seems to be the most technically hard knowledge drop we've had. So I appreciate everyone's patience and thank you all for being here. So, if you guys want to do a quick introduction on who you are, I'm Ed Brown, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. Zach, you want to go next?
Yeah, Zach Griffin, CEO of the Great Falls Association of Realtors.
Okay, Jake.
Jake Clark from the Great Falls Development Alliance.
Okay, Katie.
Katie Hanning, Home Builders Association Executive Officer.
And Sherry.
Sherry Airy, Executive Director for NeighborWorks Great Falls.
All right, well, thank you for your time. And our topic is a hot one as we've had an attempt at this as well as multiple seminars in our community to talk about housing. I feel like every conversation I have in the community, housing comes up, whether it's with base, guard, whoever. It's always housing, 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 and that seems to be a common thing around the country, but very, very important to us. So Zach, what does the market look right now? If we have someone move into our community, what does it look from the Realtors Association? What are their options?
Well, so for home sales are starting to pick up finally, and we've also had new product hit the market in the last 10 days. Lots of new listings have come online. However, it hasn't really put a dent in much. I think it moved from 1.2 months worth of inventory to 1.25 months worth of inventory, which is extremely low. That should be closer to 6 or 7 months worth of inventory. So, of course, we're in critical stage like we've all been talking about, and all of us on this call and all of the meetings and the housing summit we just had and all of those things that we continue to talk about. The median sales price went up another $11,000 month over month. So, instead of 345,000, it's 355,000. So, great sellers market. Buyers are still doing what they need to do to get into homes. The interest rate did come down a little bit in the last 2 weeks, which is good. So that's opening up the market to some additional buyers for some buying power. But overall, housing is we just don't have enough of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there, and I think we talked about this before. So it's a great seller's market, but not a buyer's market. So those folks that normally upgrade aren't upgrading. So they're not putting those different properties on the market as they would in other times. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, you are. And, I think for those people that attended the housing summit, I spoke quite a bit about, it's the largest time in the country's at forever where the largest number of multi-generational housing is currently happening. So, your first time home buyers used to enter the market between the age of 24 and 28. Now, first time home buyers are getting closer to the 30 to 35 range. So they're staying with families longer. We're not creating the churn in our community that we used to have because of the fact that, we don't have a lot of homes to downsize to. We have quite a few right now to upgrade to. And so that, housing price between the $200,000 to $350,000 range is very, very minimal at the moment.
So Sherry, when you think of what you guys do at NeighborWorks, what are you seeing on your side?
Well, I think what we've been focusing on is really trying to help people understand that if they plan a little bit longer and start that planning process today, whether it's just budget and saving for down payments, if it's folks that are actually trying to clean up their credit some so they can get a better interest rate. We're seeing people still very active in our homebuyer education classes and our housing counseling. So we see that folks are trying to be proactive. We know whenever we talk to people, we hear the stories that they just don't think it's possible. And then we share about what we do. And every month we have new homeowners that are really in that workforce housing range. They're not, they're really kind of the backbone of our community that are able to find the right house and buy. So that's what we try to encourage in this market is being ready, because when the house comes up that you want to be in the best position to get it, because it's not going to be cheaper tomorrow. If you found what you're looking for, you're putting your rent to work for you. And that's what we're seeing is so many folks are rent burdened right now, and there's just no ability to build wealth when you're having that, monthly rent be as much, if not in some places more than a mortgage.
Okay, so Katie and Jake, you both have different responsibilities to help builders or help developers come in. So maybe Jake, starting with you, what are you seeing on different projects that come in and could help in our community as far as and if they're not coming, why?
Yeah, so Great Falls has a couple of development challenges that every new project has to kind of find its way through. One of those is the location of and capacities of our infrastructure for stormwater, for sewer, for water, and things like that. And so, as we mentioned at the Housing Summit, Great Falls infrastructure is built for the size of Great Falls that we were for 40 years. And now that we're expanding by population, we've got to find new land to open up to make more housing buildable. The other is the types of projects that work in our market from a financial standpoint. The ones that work best are multifamily projects, so apartment buildings and things like that. And so, which is great because we need the units in our market, but it doesn't make homeowners out of folks. And so we need both, certainly, but we want folks to have a place to land in Great Falls as they navigate their path to home ownership. And we're starting to see some bottleneck in that as well.
Yeah, it goes back to some of that housing stock. There's just such an old housing stock, and there's just little mobility for people either up or down. So
Well, and on that, Sherry mentioned, we've got folks that are, not even thinking that home ownership is possible for them, but then taking on the additional burden of such old stock and the maintenance of that and the costs associated of that. We get folks coming in at closing just like on their chin, right? Financially shaking their pockets out to get to the dollar of, where they need to be to get into that first house. And they maybe aren't accommodating the fact they got to buy a lawnmower now, and they've got to start maintaining things that they didn't have to worry about before. And that's a pretty significant financial burden when you talk about the types of ages of homes that are available in our market.
that's why Katie's group has to come to the rescue.
Yes, yes, we'll do that. We'll get our capes out. Actually, so when we talk about the Home Builders Association and our member makeup, our builders are what people consider custom builders, which means not that they only build multi-million-dollar homes, which they all love to do, but that they build one home at a time. And usually the homeowner has purchased the property already. They go to the builder and they go from there. We don't have any developers in our community that are developing large lots. I mean, we've had a couple interesting things come through. The city commission has taken the recommendations that we sent forward as a group, and we're positive and told staff to get going on that. The other commission meeting, I thought that was excellent. So opportunities. We have to rethink what is a normal development in Great Falls, and I think smaller lots are going to be the first step. The commissioners seemed excited about the idea of course, downtown and having places above businesses, which has been going. But I'm really excited about being creative with the lot size because we just don't have a lot of land where you don't have to have that expensive infrastructure costs. And that honestly is what it is. And then we also have a labor shortage because we have the perfect storm, and we decided that every kid couldn't be in construction, every person couldn't be in construction, and that those jobs were somewhat not what we were looking at. And that's just not the case. I mean, you can make a lot of money doing this, and it would be excellent if everybody would just break it to their family member that they're probably not going to be an influencer and make any money, and that they're going to have to get their hands dirty, but it's a good living. It's a really good living, and it makes your soul just happy that you had a hard day's work and you produce something for your community. So,
Yeah, and you get that sense of accomplishment. I mean, you can see that every day. Um,
Well, then I want to make a shameless plug because to show that in action, next week
Right.
is the high school
Yes.
house, our 47th high school house built by wonderful young builders that are going to go off and do all kinds of other things. But that experience alone will help them in their life. And so and it's a great place for businesses to recruit. We've seen a lot of those young
Hmm.
builders now go on to be a part of our construction industry here in Great Falls and do other things. So
Hmm.
that's where I think Great Falls still is on the cutting edge of a lot of these things. I mean, we still have some affordability and we still have some different programs, and our combined energy, I think, is a good thing right now for the community that,
Hmm.
we're taking this and putting in front of the commission to say, hey, we're together on how we can move the needle on the housing needs in our community.
Right. If you guys have questions, please ask them. We will take questions in the comments there. One thing you brought up there, Katie, is thinking differently and
Hmm.
looking at lot size. When we visit other communities, and I'll give Billings as an example, and I can't remember the project, Jake, down there, but the project where they have small lot sizes for these homes, but also they have apartments that look like a house. It looks like the house down the road that your friend might have. And so it brings a more sense of community. There's somebody from the city. Brock was with us when we toured that, and Brock was so excited because it was something different and unique. And it kind of takes a stigma away from this might be a $400,000 house, but this might be, a renting apartment, but they look the same. You feel the same. You have a sense of
Hmm.
community. So I think those are some ideas that we need, that kind of stuff here, where it's not stuck at we have to have quarter acre or whatever it is. We have to have a basement. We have to have those other things. These are things in other communities we don't, there's none of those restrictions elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, we are lucky if this if you want to develop, the city of Great Falls is development friendly. They got their ducks together a few years ago with a little prodding from all of us, and if many of my tradesmen work in other cities across the state, and they say that by far Great Falls is the most easiest place to get stuff done. So there's no excuse for that. You can't say, well, the city won't this or the city won't that. It's not true. It's just not true.
Well, and you talk about the different types of products in the market. That Great Falls has missed waves of this development in the last 40 years, where this has happened in other cities, where we are shrinking down the lot size, to try to get more units per acre, so that developers can do well, but then also we can keep pricing down for the final
Hmm.
product, because less money is going out to taxes every month on the smaller parcels. You're building smaller overall homes on those smaller parcels. And so while it may not be the dream home that folks expect to grow into, it's a way to enter the market. And like Sherry said, have your rent do something for you and have
Hmm.
some kind of equity. And then the other product that we're not seeing in Great Falls that I'd like to see a lot more of is multifamily condo style projects, because I think that today's starter home might very well be a condo,
Yep.
and that might be the most approachable way to get new homeowners in the market. There's some challenges to that, to building in that style in Montana. There's additional liability on the builders and some things like that, but all things that could be navigated to get some projects moving. But you're also going to see density is going to be the name of the game in all projects at this point. In many pre-development meetings with the city, we have city planning asking developers, can you get more units into your site
Hmm.
plan, at hopes of bringing more doors online for potential residents in the city. And so those conversations are going to push projects towards density, which is new for Great Falls. We've been able to really spread our arms out in most neighborhoods in Great Falls for all of the history of Great Falls. We're going to start seeing some neighborhoods develop where that density is a little bit tighter and mixed, like you said, having some multifamily mixed in with single family, some larger units mixed in with smaller units, and that seems to be the type of mix that's working for developments on the financial side as well.
You
Plus,
know,
it's a complete community. It's a complete development. You have everything in there. So if you plan ahead of time, and I know that Sherry's group always has, we're going to put this here and that there, and then they've done that, but it becomes a complete development, and you're not, you know what the plan is ahead of time.
Well, I was going to say, Jake, to your message, I think the growth survey had some really good questions about the different product types and where they should go. And it was a hard one for me because I think all of those have the appropriate place in our community. If you drive around in the community, you see those different things and you see how they blend in. And I think now as we're looking at our community and how do we help with development, for me, you know, where is the opportunity in our community to add that value in? Now, for us, if we're going to do an infill home and take out a blighted property or maybe a burnout home and we're going to add back a single family home, the question becomes, when will it be important for us to go ahead and put an AUD with it and bring in two homes at the same time? When is it appropriate to put two lots together and say, now we're going to do a fourplex or some duplexes? But you see them all across our town where they really do work, and even larger areas where they may be manufactured homes or more condo style with small footprint homes. And you can see that, and for us trying to figure out how to maximize our infill lots, and that's where I think the city is very open to conversation, because we know that that density can only help with the services that we needed to provide as we all look to trying to create the next big development in some location to bring in the mix of new family homes that somebody can, either graduate into because they've outgrown their small home in downtown and they're ready for a bigger home for their kids to grow into and step up. We need that development to happen somewhere. It doesn't have to be the 3 acre lot with a mini mansion on it. It just needs to be the next level up, $500,000 home. Now that's amazing to even say that that's could be considered affordable, but that's where we are right now, and we're seeing it so much higher in places like Missoula or Bozeman. So we still have the edge for affordability to bring in those kind of developers.
Yeah, and something that's kind of hot off the presses from our airport that ties into this is Delta just said they're gonna stop their Minneapolis flight, and that's a result of not being able to have enough population and housing to support the airlines. And I think some people just think they got to stay here because we need to fly. But I think you've said it a couple times, Sherry, death by 1,000 paper cuts, and it's a result of not growing for however long and not being able to provide that infrastructure there. And so that's, it's a hot topic. So I guess my question to you all is, and maybe each of you can answer this, is as a community or as a business owner, what can I do to help? What can I do to encourage building? Who do I reach out to if there is someone who's interested and I'm in a different community? So I don't know, Zach, if you want to start.
Yeah, so I'll tackle the last question the quickest, I guess. I mean, if anybody's got questions about development, you got 4 people right here on this call, and then Brock and Lonnie down at the city if they're interested in the city, and then you got the Cascade County as well. But I think that all 4 of us can get you to the right spot and whatever that you would need, whatever questions that you have. A lot of us are looped in on development calls throughout the weeks, and also we're all collaborating, which I think this is a very good platform to get out to people that these 4 entities plus the city of Great Falls are actually working together, and we are talking about housing, and we're trying to come up with solutions and ideas for it. And I think sometimes there's this misnomer out there that not all of us play well together in the yard, and that's not true. So I think that's all great. The partnership with the chamber is probably one of the best ones that we've had in a long time. So I commend everybody on this call for that. And then as for what I would tell businesses or even existing businesses or new business owners that want to come to this town, I mean, honestly, this is probably the greatest opportunity zone in the nation at the moment. I mean, just down the road from us in Helena, Montana, the median house price is another $120,000. And then you go to Missoula, Kalispell, Whitefish, Bozeman, And even in Billings, I mean, you can't you can't be more affordable than Great Falls, Montana. I put that in air quotes. I get it, but if I was a developer or a business owner, I'd be figuring out how to, put some housing on where my existing buildings are, or if I'm thinking about considering moving here, how do you get more density into an area? Um, is the key, and I think with this new PUD that the city just approved for upslope group, that shows that the city's willing to play and help us move housing along. And there's more people more talented on this call than I am that can speak to a lot of those other things. But from the realtor's point of view, we're all about housing. So we want people to be in homes. So whatever that looks like, we want to be able to help.
Well, and I would say, to your question about what people can do to help. So, each of these projects, especially when you start adding density to an area, or you start adding a project with more density to a neighborhood or adjacent to a neighborhood that hasn't had that kind of density before, the city requires some public hearings to happen. So, I think a lot of times people's posture around public meetings is, they're for the opponents to go and voice their opposition. But I think it's equally important for folks to really see the big picture for Great Falls, and that adding more units does help keep the purchase prices lower for all units in our market. And it helps kind of flatten the curve and the rise in our cost of living. And so by doing that, adding density in those things, we're supportive of the whole pie, as it were, in Great Falls. So I would say if there's a proposal for something in your neighborhood, don't assume that the city is going to be able to get that passed without some support from the neighborhood. And so I would say get out and participate, support these projects when they're proposed, even in your backyard, and see the bigger picture for your community. That is, hey, let's not complain about the development of parcels that ought to be developed. Let's complain more about our cost of living, and let's align together to keep that down.
Yeah, don't be afraid to go to commission meetings is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, go to your neighborhood council, go to your planning and zoning boards, go to the public hearings for these projects, and be in support of them. Silence does not necessarily equal support for some of these projects, and there's some really loud opposition sometimes. It's not really representative of the neighborhood, and so we want to make sure that voice is being heard on behalf of kind of the longer term picture of Great Falls. And for businesses in Great Falls, I would say ways that you can support. If you do have land under control, now is a really good time to start looking at getting it developed. We need to sort of look at highest and best use of every piece of property in Great Falls, whether that's, tearing something down and building something up, or if there's a way to manage housing units into any type of a project that you're building. Let's look at that. Let's sit down with the city and find ways to get some housing units inserted, because every little bit's going to help. There's a great project I keep pointing to over by the Voyagers Stadium on the corner, I think at 8th Avenue North and 25th. And it's a 12-plex on sort of what's an extra wide or a double lot on the corner in Great Falls. Man, there's a lot of corners that size in Great Falls that could be really pull some local neighborhood multifamily and a number of units. It's not going to be all that noticeable when you look at things like traffic and the other demands that neighborhoods have, but you get more neighbors out of the deal, and folks have a place to live, and it helps distribute everybody through our school systems and things like that, without just picking a corner of town and saying, we're going to build out here, and so we need a new fire station and a new school and everything. That sort of infill development is really how we're going to get there. And I just want to remind folks, we need 6,500 new units in the next decade. And that ignores things like Sentinel Project and other things. So we're short by a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to jump off of what Jake just said, because one of the things we do, we really focus a lot on some of the downtown area and some of the infill. We try to make sure that we're attending to that. And when we talk about that old housing stock, as you drive around, unfortunately, you do see the houses that have been boarded up, or maybe they're the property, now is in the hands of the children that live out of state, or somebody's just holding on to it. The more that those can come back locally, particularly, NeighborWorks is very fortunate. Sometimes we have lots donated to us, or we're able to get them and at a reasonable price, and then put a new house down. We've done some of that with some multifamily properties. So my message to the community of what they could do is, like, if you're sitting on something, reach out to one of us and find out what the best use might be and where that could land for our community, versus sitting on it thinking, oh, at some point we'll do something with this. We've been able to make some great homes on lots that the family just was ready to get rid of. And because of what we do, we were able to take it, make it a high school house, or make it into some apartments. And so the other thing that I think, the call to the community would be, is if you are an employer and you have people that you want to keep, encourage them to come and seek out, what it looks like to have housing and to have roots here in Great Falls. If you have children, tell them to reach out and find out the ways that they could get into housing. That mindset of, I won't be a homeowner, or I'm not ready yet. The day that you decide to get ready, it's the same journey. So go ahead and do it now, and reach out and start learning more from realtors or lenders, or take some of our NeighborWorks classes, because that will help those buyers understand how to get into those homes when they come up. And again, that will keep that movement going. And again, continue to show the need for more housing, which incentivizes, I think, sometimes builders to realize, hey, there's a good group out there that if I build this infill home that I don't typically do, I'll be able to sell it quickly and move on to the next home.
Right. Hey, Katie, your turn.
Yeah, same thing. I think that the more that we're doing here, and not necessarily just apartments, but the building that's going in. A couple of my guys that swore for years that they weren't going to build in the city are now building projects in the city. So that's kind of nice to see. So I'm just waiting for them to say, well, I guess I can build more than one house at a time and do that. There's a lot of that. We're Great Falls, so we like to sit back and wait and see, because we never I don't know what our deal is. I've been here all my life, but I can tell you that I live in a neighborhood where there's been down on 4th Avenue North and 32nd, in that whole area where Jake's talking about on 8th Avenue North. And those apartments, those multifamilies, you didn't even know they're there. They just fit right seamlessly into the neighborhood. It hasn't caused any more driving problems. Their kids can walk to school. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And so, I mean, other than that, it was an empty lot, and I'm really impressed by how much they could fit into that space. But good for them. And we applaud that. And I'm hoping that that's going to make our guys say, I can do this. I'm going to do that. And we always encourage them to go see Jake, because he'll tell them exactly how to do it.
Well,
Right.
that, and, some of these larger projects, you know, they just cost a lot up front, right? And so I talked to another project in town that's going on a similar size lot. And, the group that's building it is building a fourplex, which is great. I couldn't talk them into a 12plex because capital expense is really high, right? And so, we can get them to pencil on the pro forma, but coming up with that cash on the front end to trigger all the bank financing can be a challenge. And so I would say, yeah, have them give us a call, and let's see if we can help with their financial projections to see that taking that additional risk could really pay off. And the other is, if you just need some more cash for a project, we've got lending tools we might be able to deploy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all for your time today. More discussion to come, and maybe do this again in the fall, like a check-in in person. Jake's traveling, so we appreciate you jumping on, Jake. And if you guys have any questions or need any contact information, we'll share that in the post here. And thank you for your time. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks everybody.
Bye.